My people, you see, the more days comes by, the more evidence that exposes Justice James Omotosho continues to unveil. Here, I want to bring another clearer perspective that justifies the claims of constitutional violations of James Omotosho in his conviction of Mazi Nnamdi on the count of terrorism. I want us to understand it clearly, but you owe me one responsibility. Comment on this video, like it, and share it for other people to see it. Make sure you share it. I don't know whether the legal counsel to the accused person or to the convicted person, we are able to dig this deep. I don't even know whether they knew about it from the beginning or they didn't know about it. But the fact remains that it is an undeniable factor that can help for him to obtain speedy justice. So we are duty bound to share the video so that people will see it. Let it be made clear in the simplest but strongest legal terms that Justice James Omotosho stepped into a constitutional trap the moment he continued the terrorism trial of Mazi Nnamdi without first satisfying the mandatory requirements imposed on him by the Nigerian Constitution and binding Supreme Court decisions. Terrorism under Terrorism Prevention and Prohibition Act of 2022 carries life imprisonment, and once an offense attracts life imprisonment or even death, the law automatically treats it as a capital matter. In capital matters, the judge has no discretion, no freedom, and no wiggle room. Section 36, Article 6C requires that the accused must have legal representation, and it is the judge, not the accused, who bears the full legal burden of ensuring that representation is present. The Supreme Court has already settled this matter beyond argument in Oba versus State. The court held that legal representation in any capital offense, any offense that can lead to death, is a foundational requirement for a valid trial. In Okonkwo versus State, the Supreme Court made it clear, even stricter, by ruling that if an accused charged with capital offense appears without counsel, the trial judge must adjourn and must ensure that he secures counsel, even if the accused refuses or insists on defending himself. It was not a suggestion, it is a mandatory requisite. It is a mandatory requirement imposed upon Justice Omotosho, James Omotosho, to make sure that Mazi Nnamdi has a legal representative. Mazi Nnamdi at that point has no power over Omotosho to decide whether he should be represented by a counsel or not. The onus lied upon James Omotosho to impose one in the case where Mazi Nnamdi continuously insisted it does not constitutionally align on Mazi Nnamdi's right to demand that he does not need a counsel to represent him in that very case. Omotosho, in this very regard, is under a compulsory constitutional mandate to make sure that there is a representative for Mazi Nnamdi under a case that attracts capital punishment, either life imprisonment as he convicted him, or at worst death sentence. So when Mazi Nnamdi was saying, James Omotosho, you lack jurisdiction to try me on this case, I don't know whether Mazi Nnamdi was talking based on this very angle of the law, knowing quite sure that Omotosho lacks jurisdiction to try him when he says he has no counsel. But James Omotosho continued to try a case that falls under a capital punishment, that making sure that the accused person, according to the law, has legal representative. So even if the accused insists on representing himself, that ruling alone binds on Omotosho. You see, when you hear that the law is a double-edged sword, it is binding on Omotosho. At this time, when Mazi Nnamdi insisted that he don't have a legal counsel to represent him, the law is now shifting from the side of Mazi Nnamdi, now focusing on Omotosho to see what Omotosho is going to do, to see the reaction of Omotosho over the decision of Mazi Nnamdi, because now this responsibility is not binding on Mazi Nnamdi. It is not compulsorily binding on Mazi Nnamdi to say, I don't have a representative, I don't have a legal counsel to represent me in this case. It is not within Mazi Nnamdi constitutional jurisdiction to decide in a matter like this. It falls on Omotosho, the judge, to make sure that if Mazi Nnamdi says no, I don't need a counsel, he will impose one and make it clear to him, for him to understand the law of the Federal Republic of Nigeria mandates me as the judge to impose a counsel upon you when you decide not to go with one in a case of terrorism, which is treated under Nigerian law as a capital offense. It was not Mazi Nnamdi responsibility, compulsory responsibility, to make sure that he had a counsel. It was Omotosho's legal responsibility to impose one upon Nnamdi. Now, Nnamdi led him on to say, I don't have a counsel to represent me. And he kept on telling Omotosho, you don't have jurisdiction to try me on this case. To everybody watching from outside, an accused person, a person that is standing trial of terrorism in the court of law, telling a judge, you lack jurisdiction. Anyone could pause and ask, why would Mazi Nnamdi be telling Omotosho, you lack legal jurisdiction to try me on this matter? Jurisdiction is the lifeline of every legal trial. So that very aspect alone bides strictly on Omotosho, and it removes any form of judicial discretion. Then in Udo versus State, the Supreme Court concluded that any capital trial conducted without mandatory legal representation is incurably defective and completely void from the beginning. Section 287, Article 1 of the Constitution makes this very Supreme Court pronouncement binding on every court, including the Federal High Court. Once a judge acts contrary to this, he is no longer protected by judicial discretion. He enters constitutional wrongdoing. Now combine this with the fact that throughout proceeding, Nnamdi repeatedly told the court that it lacks jurisdiction over him under Nigerian law. Once jurisdiction is challenged, the judge must immediately halt the process and determine jurisdiction before touching anything else. Any step taken while the issue concerning jurisdiction is unresolved is illegal and void. Yet Omotosho continued the trial, continued taking steps, and even gave a ruling without first resolving jurisdiction and without ensuring mandatory legal representation. I must say that is a constitutional trap. Two fundamental defects occurring at the same time: lack of counsel in a capital trial and unresolved jurisdiction. No judgment can survive that combination. What it means is simple and legally undeniable. The proceedings are void, the judgment is invalid, and the action of Justice James Omotosho amounts to a constitutional breach. Whether he acted knowingly or unknowingly does not change the law. He violated Section 36, Article 6C, violated Section 287, Article 1, and acted in direct defiance of the Supreme Court binding decisions. In Nigerian law, those violations create a clear, unavoidable consequences. Justice James Omotosho now has a case to answer because the Constitution and the Supreme Court have already declared his action unlawful. It's no more propaganda. You must understand, the Constitution is the grundnorm of the law. The Constitution overrides every other law. And now, it's the same Constitution upon which James Omotosho claimed that he convicted Mazi Nnamdi. The same Constitution is reversing. It's now changing direction, focusing on him, legally scrutinizing the process and everything. And the Constitution under Section 36, Article 6C says James Omotosho, he was required by law to impose a counsel upon Mazi Nnamdi. In this case, Mazi Nnamdi had no option than to obey the rule of the Constitution. When Mazi Nnamdi said, show me the law upon which you are judging me, Show me the law upon which you are trying me. If James Omotosho read out the exact law that the charges rested upon, Mazi Nnamdi had no option than to obey the constitution, having seen it written. But here, he kept on telling James Omotosho, you lack jurisdiction to try me on this matter. You don't have jurisdiction, legal jurisdiction to try me on this matter. I refuse to open my defense without knowing the exact law upon which I am being charged. James Omotosho couldn't have continued. He could have resolved that very issue, but he did not. I don't know whether Mazi Nnamdi was acting deliberately. I don't know whether Mazi Nnamdi's own trap was heading towards this very direction or not. I don't know. Only him knows. But I believe if the defense counsel approach this case properly, by law, it will be assumed as if it never existed for once. It never happened. It never occurred. Nothing like that existed ever in the eyes of the law. We'll just keep on keeping our fingers crossed, hoping for the best, believing that Mazi Nnamdi's legal team will equip themselves properly to approach the appeal in the appeal court. There are some things that cannot be denied, some evidence that cannot be denied, some constitutional values that cannot be denied. These ones are too glaring and too important to the Constitution of Nigeria that they cannot be overlooked. Let it be clear to you. I want you to understand this and understand it clearly. That responsibility is not entirely upon the accused person. The accused person, yes, has the right to choose any legal counsel of his choice to defend him in that very trial. But it is not compulsorily mandated on him to make sure that he has one. It is compulsorily mandated upon the judge, upon the sitting judge, to impose one on him in a case where he has none, or where he refused to have one, or where he says he don't want to have any. It is the responsibility of the presiding judge to make sure a counsel is provided over the accused person. In a case of life or death sentence, it was James Omotosho's violation of the Constitution that he swore an oath to protect. Thank you so much, and God bless you. Share the video for other people to see it. If it is your first time coming across my videos, I plead with you to follow my page and subscribe. God bless you.